Alrighty, I'm doing this out just on a whim because I found this article from forever ago, and I think it's just super fascinating and really fun. And it's an interview in 1934 with Walt Disney for the most part, and and this is the 1934. This is about the mid 30s. This is when he was a household name. He got a lot of his shorts basically made him a household name. His short cartoons. It was his shorts were the standard in cartoons for pretty much the most of the from probably the 20s up to probably the 40s, maybe even the 50s. I'd say probably the 50s. Uh, but that's a turning point. The thing is, this article is called Mickey Mouse Squeals. It's basically a funny, not very serious expose on how these cartoons are made. And if you know if you know history of Disney like I kind of do, 34 is very pretty interesting because this was this was about a year or two, I think 2 years, or yeah, I think 2 years after the Three Little Pigs cartoon came out, which was enormous success just everywhere. But also, uh, not too long into 1934, he would begin working on the first feature-length film he would make, which of course is Snow White, which he'd been wanting to do forever. And this kind of goes into that in a way, in a fun little way. I'll try and read the article. I'm gonna mumble through. I'm gonna stutter like a silly person. But if you want to just read it yourself, I'll probably link it in the description if you want to. I don't know. We'll see what happens. I'm winging this. I have no idea how to record any of this stuff. I have no idea how this works. I'm using OBS. Never used it before. Let's go. Yeah, by J.P. McEvoy. And the thing I know about him, from what little research I did, is that he was a he worked in Hollywood as I believe a writer or producer. He helped make he worked on musicals and also some films in like the late 20s, early 30s. I think is when his best ones were. But I think after a while he just kind of went into journalism, and it worked pretty well because he's a very witty writer, and his stuff's pretty fun to read. Yeah, J.P. McEvoy. Uh, I have just had a long talk with Mickey Mouse. I wanted to know how he got that way. I wanted to know how he could jump around and dance and sing. And since, like Mickey Mouse, I too am a simple child of nature, I thought the best way to find out was to go and ask him. So I asked my secretary to get his secretary on the phone and make an appointment for an interview. "What is your business with Mickey Mouse?" said the secretary very briskly. But my secretary, who was just as brisk, if not brisker, said, "Mr. McEvoy wants to talk to Mickey Mouse himself. In a pinch, he will talk to Minnie. If he can't see Minnie, he will talk to any of the three little pigs, except for the grouchy one, the one who says, 'Work and play, don't mix.' Mr. McEvoy thinks he's a disagreeable, smug little citizen, and he will not have any part of it. If he can't have talk to the three little pigs, he will talk to the big bad wolf. But he doesn't need an appointment for that because all he has to do is open the door and let him in." Well, you know how secretaries are. The best thing to do is to let them outbrisk one another, and while they are wearing each other out, you just go ahead and get things done. And that's just how I got to see Mickey Mouse himself. To Disney in self-defense. I said, "Suppose I didn't have a secretary to make an appointment for me. Who would I go get in touch with?" "Walt Disney, of course. All I have to do is call Walt Disney and say, 'I would like to have an interview. I'd like to have you introduce me to Mickey Mouse.' To Mickey Mouse. And before you ask me why, I will tell you. I want to know how a few pen and ink lines and a few dabs of color can come alive and dance and sing and make millions go around hollering, 'Who's afraid of the big bad wolf?' until it becomes a menace. This I want to get them to know how it all started and where it's going and when it will end. Now, I think that's that right there is pretty funny because it feels reminiscent of Frozen and Let It Go, and how just a ton of children were singing that song. And their parents were like, "Oh my gosh, make them stop! Why would you do this, Disney?" And Disney's like, "I was just making a movie. I don't know. It was fun." So it was. I feel like I like to think it was the same thing back then, with just in the mid '34. There's just a bunch of children singing "Who's Afraid of the Big Bad Wolf," just annoying parents everywhere. I think that's a fun little thing to think about. So I did just that, and in no time I was going east on Hollywood Boulevard until I came to Disney Studio, and in less time than that, I was sitting in Walt Disney's office, also asking him a lot of questions. I can talk. This is not idle curiosity, I said. It's self-defense. For years, thousands of people have asked me, how do they make those animated pictures? And for months now, many more thousands have said, you write for the movies, don't you? And I say, shh, not so loud. But you do, they insisted. And while I waited for them to ask me what I wrote, they would one and all wind up and say, I wish you would tell me one thing. How are the Mickey Mouse pictures made? So you see, Walt, I have to find out so I can tell them. And then maybe they'll ask me something about myself. So Disney told me all about it. He made little drawings and diagrams and called his technical staff to explain in detail all the intricate processes by which 15,000 separate little drawings are changed into 700 feet of magic. And when he had finished, I thanked him and told him I would explain it all to you, my dear public, and that is just what I'm going to do now. And when I am finished, you will understand it as well as I do, and I don't understand it at all. That's exactly how animation is. I love animation. It's still just mind-boggling to me how they do it. I have often suspected that Mrs. McEvoy's little boy, Joseph, is a trifle dumb. He's talking about himself here. Realization reared its ugly head many times during my scholastic career, but it never really moved on until about a year ago, when a shipful of engineers and college professors spent 7 days explaining the principle of the gyroscope to me. They even took me down to the bottom of the Conte de Sav. I can't speak this. I'm sorry. It's a flippin' California place in relays and showed me the three big gyroscopes there. They started them and stopped them, and they had me start them and then stop them, and then took me upstairs and shut me in a room with little models and helped me play with them all afternoon. And as they explained, I listened, and as I listened, I understood. When they stopped talking, I couldn't remember what they had said, which had never since prevented me, however, from explaining all about gyroscopes to anyone who will listen. So now I have all the intricacies of animation and Technicolor explained to me in the best experts in the world, and you're going to get the benefit of what I have forgotten. Somewhere you may be able to read between the lines which I have left out and learn something which I never knew about a lot of things I can't remember. But I have much hope. And now with those vague, general, and totally inaccurate remarks, we dissolve again to Walt Disney's office, Disney speaking. It really is very simple, said Disney, who had bright eyes and a little mustache that looks just a tiny bit like Mickey himself. In fact, when you hear Mickey on the screen, you're really listening to Disney, who's been Mickey's voice acting since the beginning. Hitler frowns on Mickey. Oh no, I said that. I don't know if I can say that. I'll get demonetized. Oh. Remember those little books of drawings you used to get in Cracker Jack boxes? I'm way too young for that. You rifled the pages very quickly, and the drawing moved. It was a face laughing or a figure jumping. I remember, well, that's all there is to it. Take three little pigs. And, by the way, I do remember back, this has been years ago, I just remember the whole thing where you take two pieces, there's two drawings on two separate pieces of paper, and you would flip them back and forth and look like they're doing stuff. Like, that's like the most simple animation ever, and I think that's kind of what I remember. It kind of was like there's some books that did that and stuff, or even like flip books for animation. I'm afraid, I winced. I can't anymore. I said, "You take them." I had them, said Disney. If you hear Who's Afraid of the Big Bad Wolf one more time, I'll jump out the window. You and me, hand in hand, I said. We just finished doing them in French, he said, in Spanish. What do they sing in French? Who has a fear of the wolf grand and ferocious? In German? We're out of Germany, said Disney shyly. You see, Hitler thinks Mickey Mouse is not serious enough, but Mussolini likes him, so maybe I'll do them as Three Little Pigs in Italian too. What I'd like to know, I say, is how do you get them in English in the first place? How do you make little drawings sing and dance? Well, first you start off with a story. I have a story department. And conferences? At lunch, we sit around and discuss. Excuse me, let me turn the page here. And decide what we put up to be the most amusing incidents that we could put on. You mean like gags? No, we work on gags later. And how long does it take to make a picture like the Three Little Pigs? About 4 months. And how long does it take to run it on the screen? About 8 minutes. You see, the work on the story, we work on the story. You see, work on the story about a month. Then we have the story all laid out. We turn it over to another development, and they work about another month laying it out, planning the scenes and the music and general construction, and getting all the characters set. And then, by that time, the director and the musicians have been working with the layout men who prepare the rough sketches of the complete scenes, showing the atmosphere of the action, keeping in mind the movements of the characters. And next, the whole story is laid onto sheets of little squares, each square or box representing a bar of music. How much of the picture to be shown in each bar depends on the tempo which the music is to be played. Are you with me? I fell off back there when you said tempo, but I'm trying to catch up. Let's forget about music for a few minutes and talk about the drawings. The whole picture is divided up into scenes. You get that, don't you? Yes, I said brightly. Like when that disagreeable pig is building his house with bricks. Enter the in-betweeners. That's right. Now, each time he lifted a brick and put it down, the action had to be shown by a number of drawings. Now, that's where the animator comes in. He makes the principal drawings showing the pig picking up the brick, another picture that has the brick up in the air, and a third picture where he is putting it down. Now, that's only 3 drawings, but there are maybe 50 more drawings necessary in between to show the complete action. Who does this? The in-betweeners. Well, of course, is clear even to me, I said, happily. An in-betweener is an artist who makes in-between drawings. An animator is the one who starts the in-betweeners and then draws in between the in-betweeners. And then what? Well, now we have a lot of drawings all on paper. They are all transferred to very thin sheets of celluloid, and this is done by tracers and inkers, and when they get through transferring all these drawings to celluloid, the opakers take hold, reverse the celluloids, and opaque the areas occupied by the drawings. I see. And then what? Then each drawing is photographed separately on the film, and the celluloid sheets, or cells as we call them, are washed clean and ready to be used again. How many drawings? Between 12 and 15,000. How long does the photographing take? From 100 to 150 hours. And by the time you have finished, how many different people have worked on the picture? From 60 to 75. How many artists have you here? About 100. And if an artist worked all day long, animating like mad, how many feet of film would it come to? About 5 feet. And how long would that take to run across the screen? Disney snapped his fingers. Scat. Do you have an artist who specializes in just certain things? Yes, we have one artist here who does only cute things, like little pigs, and an artist who does the big, bold, dashing things like the wolf. We have other artists who specialize in animating running, or eating, or dancing. You can see how that might be, especially since music came into the picture. You want to show somebody running and bringing his foot down hard in the right beat. On the right beat. Whoever drew that would have to know how to put a foot down hard, so it looks like it so it would look like it and almost sound like it. That's something that I know is difficult, is making sound effects mix well with animation. And I think people have actually gotten a little more fun with it, making like even Disney had fun with, like, you're not making just a sound of someone taking a step. You're like making, like, I believe for Snow White, when the 7 dwarfs are sneaking around and it's a little sneaky sound. Someone was taking their old leather wallet, opening and closing. So they're just like squeaking as they go past. Like it was just the sound they use is just outrageous. Music has its mysteries. I'm glad you mentioned music, I said. Now I want you to explain that so I can understand it. Just how the music is written to fit the picture, and how the characters manage to open and shut their mouths on the right notes. If you don't mind, I will leave you at this point, said Disney. The man in charge of that department could do a better job of explaining than I can. In fact, he's explained it so that I almost understand it myself. And that's how I met Mr. Kelly. I think it's so funny that Disney isn't even completely certain of how they do the sound thing, because it's so complicated. This is how I met Mr. Kelly. First, he took me into a room full of electrical apparatus. A lot of serious-looking scientists were running around, making profound and abstruse noises at one another. As long as you don't start talking to me like that, I said to Mr. Kelly. He looked at me pityingly and began in a slow, primer-like voice. Do you know what a motion picture film looks like? Yes, I said. A lot of little squares are put together with rows of holes on each side. These are little pictures on each one of the squares. They're each the little pictures on each one of the squares, and if you run them fast enough, they seem to be moving, hence moving pictures. Pretty good, huh? Marvelous, said Mr. Kelly. Now, those little squares, as you call them, are frames, and the speed of which these frames run through the projector is a fixed and universal 24 frames per second. Don't forget that. I'll try not, Mr. Kelly. Of course, I have a lot of things to remember besides that. School, taxes, mortgage, interest dates, anniversaries, Discover America, my telephone number. Mr. Kelly was firm. 24 frames per second. If you can't remember that, there is no use going on. I often suspect there isn't much use anyway, I said, but be of good cheer. 24 frames per second, I've got it. Hold it, said Mr. Kelly, and now listen. With that, he pulled some levers, pushed some buttons, and out of a big electric gadget came a succession of low, rhythmic snorts. Coink, 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 coink. Those are beats, he said. The tempo, in other words. We set that first. You know what a tempo is? Like Walt's time, I said brilliantly. He ignored me, which hurt me a little bit. Now, once the tempo is established, we have to know we know now how many drawings we'll have to have in each bar of music. Can you see that? There was a slight film over my eyes as I repeated drawings, bars, music, tempo, beats, waltz time. For example, if the tempo is indicated at 4/12, each bar of the music covers 48 frames of action. Coink, and it's done. I nodded gamely and murmured, 48 into 12, multiplied by 4, equals tempo, beats, bars, waltz time. I was hanging on to waltz time. Zwei Herzen in 48 frames. I love you only. I think that might be a waltz reference. I don't know this. I don't know much about waltz. So so then we go ahead with the music because we know just how many bars there will be, and the animators go ahead with the drawings because they know just how many frames or drawings they will have to make. The music, sound effects, and voices are all recorded separately. Then we put them in the drawing together, and then they come out even. Exactly. You see, when the music is recorded, for example, each musician wears an earphone and he doesn't watch the conductor, but listens to the beat from this electrical impulse and keeps the time with it. Listen. I know, I said. It goes coink, coink, coink. Well, that's all there is to it, said Mr. Kelly. Are there any questions? None at all, I answered simply. I understood everything. First, there are animators, and then in-betweeners, and then electrical whoosits that says coink, coink, and frames, and frames the beats, or beats the frames until you have a tempo like waltz time, and when you put it all together, it sings Who's Afraid of the Big Bad Wolf with gestures. A number of assistants surrounding me at this point and led me away. You better get out of here, said the biggest one grimly. When Mr. Kelly gets all white like that, he is liable to do something terrible. So they took me back to Disney's office, where I met Mr. Morgan, who is public relations counsel for Mickey Mouse. You look pale, said Morgan. Tempo, I said. 24 frames per second. Beats. Maybe you have gone through enough for one day, murmured Disney. Why don't you lie down, or go home? Or go home and lie down, added Morgan brightly, co-starring Mickey. Suddenly, my brain cleared. I've got it now, I said. I understand everything. I am sure I can explain it so everyone can understand it. Poor fellow, said Disney. It's easy, but not enough, I rattled on. I need facts, more information, more statistics. The public loves statistics. The public takes awful beatings, said Morgan. Who ought to know? What kind of statistics do you want? Facts, I said. Historical hoopla. When did it all start? Who started it? I don't know, said Disney. I started back in 1921 in Kansas City. I called them laughograms. 2 years later, I came out here with my brother Roy and produced the Alice cartoons, which were a combination of real-life characters and animated cartoons. So that idea so that idea combining Mary Pickford and Mickey Mouse wasn't such a startling innovation after all. Not at all, said Disney. I think it's very practical. In fact, I've just made a short picture for Metro with Jimmy Durante and Mickey Mouse. I've actually seen that before. I believe it's part of a film where Jimmy Durante is a comedian, and during it, they're in, I think, some lounge or study or party place or something. They're in a room with drinks and cigarettes as they were in the 30s. And someone goes, "Eek, a mouse!" And then they'll show that's actually it's Mickey Mouse, and he comes up and he winks up on like the on the wall, which is all white. So it's kind of like they're animating him into the film, the live action, and having him do some little interaction with it. It's nothing outrageous, but it's pretty fun seeing something. I'm trying to. That wasn't that. I don't know if that was the first time that Mickey interacted with an actual person. I just think of back when like Jerry from Tom and Jerry was in that movie with Gene Kelly. But anyway, I'm babbling on. The history of the animated cartoon goes back farther than that of the motion picture, said Morgan. According to Earl Thyssen of the Los Angeles Museum, who had made the most thorough research into this, excuse me, devices for showing motion by a series of cartoon pictures were toys. The first one invented around 1826. Another called the Wheel of the Devil in 1834. The Wheel of Life was introduced in the United States by William Lincoln in 1867. That was the introduction of the animated cartoon to this country, but it wasn't until 1906 the first cartoon made on motion picture film was made by J. Stuart Blackton for Vitagraph, and that was called Humorous Faces of Funny Faces. That's arguably the first cartoon. I don't know, or at least the oldest one that exists today. I'm pretty sure there had to have been something more than that. That just unfortunately never lasted. But yeah, it's extremely simple. I barely even consider it animation because it's just things appearing. It's very simple, but it's fascinating from the historical aspect. Who made the first picture with sound? I did, said Disney modestly. I called it Steamboat Willie. Public domain. Disney also made the first animated picture in Technicolor, said Morgan. There were a few color cartoons before that, but this is the first to use three-color emission process. That's true. They were not the first to do it in color. Off the top of my head, I can't remember what it was, but yeah, they're the first one to do like full like. Before that, it was two-strip color, which was like green and red, but Disney had green, red, and what's the other color? Not yellow, is it? Gotta remember color wheel. Is it magenta? Wait, red, green, blue? Cyan? Red, green, cyan. That sounds about right. Yeah, they use that, which basically makes it so you can have all the entire color of the rainbow instead of just kind of cheating. And if you look at the old Merry Melodies, there's a lot of the early color Merry Melodies things. There's a lot of them that are in two-strip color that looks. You can just tell that they're missing one. They're only doing two sheets of color and they're missing one. But they animate in a way where it looks pretty good. But Disney was the first to do it all in color, and that's. And then they were. It was pretty great how I think they trademarked the Technicolor thing immediately after that, so no one else could use it. Which is there's Disney for you. The what? He said. I'll explain it to you later, said Morgan. You will not, I said. I can explain a little bit. Pet mice for Disney. Now, I would like just a few words about you, Mr. Disney. How old are you? 32. Married? Yes. Ever go to art school? Kansas City and Chicago. Ever a cartoon on a newspaper? I tried, but I couldn't get a job. How did you start animating? For motion picture advertisements, made the first one in my father's garage for a Kansas City theater. Do you like mice? I like them a lot, but I'm afraid of them. I used to keep them in my drawer of my desk and feed them, but they were always getting out and scaring me. Tell them about the time we tried to get rid of them, prompted Morgan. Disney smiled boyishly and said in a soft voice, I was really fond of this little group. Captured them from the wastebasket. Kept them in my office desk for quite a while. Then one day I had to leave town, and nobody around the place would have anything to do with them. So I gathered them in a little box and took them out in the vacant lot and turned them loose. Well, they just sort of stood there and looked at me, sort of surprised, astonished, hurt, you might say. They couldn't understand what I was doing, so I turned and walked away. And when I turned to look back, they were still standing there, looking at each other, much as to say, well, of all the dirty tricks, it was dirty too, at Disney, mournfully. Have you any unrealized ambitions? A few, but I've gotten over most of them. I wanted to do a big dramatic. I wanted to be a big dramatic director. Order armies around and blow up dams, sink battleships, make epics, huh? Super epics," said Disney. Oops. "You can make all the epics, as far as I'm concerned," said I said feelingly. "Silly epics in color with coinks. They'd be honeys too if you made them." I believe that honeys is a term like it's fun or funny, which that's what I think it is at least. But Disney wasn't listening. He was far away. "I'm going to make a full-length picture one of these days. I'm excited. I'm experimenting with it now, but I don't want to say anything about it yet. But the general idea is, don't tell me," I said, though I was dying to know. I knew I couldn't keep a secret like that. "Could you keep quiet about the three little pigs, or what is more important? Will you?" That's the end of the article. I just think it's very interesting that this is I don't know if it might have been the first thing of Disney mentioning like making a feature film, but he was actually, I believe he just started, like I said in the beginning, he was just started being in production of Snow White. And I believe he was actually had a bunch of in planning, but this is the one that he was working on now, and this is the you know Snow White. Of course, I could go on about Snow White, how it was just just an amazing thing. But the thing about when he made Snow White is that they had to they were like, yeah, but you know our bread and butter is shorts. We're good at those. We're the best at those, and we're making decent money doing that. We're your household name, all this stuff. Why do you want to just take seemingly all the money you've saved up and just risk it all on a feature film? That's what Disney was. He always pushing forward, and he knew that he knew if he didn't make a feature film that someone else would have. And but because of him doing that, Snow White, whether you think it's a masterpiece or not, I personally don't think of it as a masterpiece, but I think it's for what it is. It's one of the most important films ever made. It might be the most important animated film ever made because it's not the first feature film, but it was the one that went on to make it seemed to be the influence for almost every country, every other country, every other every art. They all took influence. Like, okay, I want to make a animation movie now, or I want to get into animation, or it influenced everyone. It's it's just one of those things that it will. Snow White will stand the test of time longer than Disney probably will be around. I mean, like the corporation Disney will people know the story of Snow White almost certainly entirely because of the movie, the Disney film. Like if you say what's the story of Snow White, they just say the movie, and like, well, that's not how it is. That's the Disney version. That's their version of it. But it's just everyone knows it's that. Yeah, but anyway, that's the article. I might find something different at some point, but I just thought that was really interesting. I had to share it with someone. Uh, I think it's great that listening to Disney in 34 kind of explain how the pictures are made and tell him a little about himself and explain all this stuff, and is in a really fun little article. Right. Thank you.